Last night is a night of preaching, and today, what I'm going to do this morning is, I would say, a little bit more of a teaching, or even almost a bit of like a kind of a lecture. And what I want to do today, this morning, is pick up kind of where I left off last night. Where if last night was kind of the why and the motivation and the heart, today I want to talk about the how. I want to talk about how is it that we go forward and begin to create a world where we're restoring truth back to the public squares. See, we can have a lot of energy, and we can have a lot of heart, and we can have a lot of passion, but if we don't have a good game plan, you're still going to lose, right? And so today I want to talk about a game plan. And so to do that, let me go back a little bit, and I'm going to use this John 17 passage as just kind of a platform this morning and a backdrop of why I think this is important. So anyway, let me go back. I'm going to go back 20 years from now. This summer is my 20-year high school reunion, and so it feels a little weird, but 20 years ago, at about this time, so, second semester, my senior year in 2004, I had to write a senior paper. And this was like a requirement of graduation. And I wrote a senior paper, and the thesis was something to the effect of that the mega church, or the seeker-sensitive church model, was the hope of the American church and the hope of the future. It was 2004, and I had my books, and I was reading through them, and there was a book by Bill Hybels, and there was a book by Andy Stanley, and there was a book by this crazy, kind of cool, artistic guy named Erwin McManus out in Los Angeles, and here I am, 17 years old, and I'm reading these books, and I'm writing this defense on why this church model was going to save America, and it was the future of the church. Now here I am. The next couple of years after that, I went off to college, and I wanted to make a lot of money and run for office, and then I eventually came back home, and I started interning and going into ministry and cut my teeth in this exact church model that I had been writing about just a year or two earlier. And my intention this morning is not to demean anyone. My intention this morning is not to indict anyone that doesn't need indicting. My intention this morning is to simply talk about 20 years later of reflection as we look at America right now, which is a different country in many ways than it was 20 years ago. What's next? What's next? And for those of you who have been around Redemption for a while, we have been on this journey for a while. And what I want to propose this morning and kind of talk through is, what does the next era of the American church look like? And how is it that we win again? Because I don't know about you, but I'm very interested in winning. Because winning looks like preserving the greatest country ever. Winning looks like seeing people won to Christ and salvation. Winning looks like maintaining freedom so that our kids and our grandkids get to grow up in the freedoms that we had. And I am very interested in winning, and I'm very interested in preserving the good things that we have, or getting back some of the things that we've lost. And I unequivocally believe that the church has an incredibly important role to play in that, right? So how do we win? In 2016, when we launched Redemption Church, and I, like anyone who's ever planted a church, will always get asked the question, so what kind of church are you? What kind of church are you? And when back in 2016, when people asked the question, what kind of church are you, they really meant two questions. Question one was, are you spirit-filled or not? Right? So to what level of charismaticism are you? And then the second question, when they were asking what kind of church are you, they meant this: are you more historical or modern? Right? Are you more like the modern megachurch, or are you more like a mainline denominational church? Like, where do you fit on that axis as well? And that was what the question kind of was. And so when we started Redemption, a lot of people just thought, well, are you just exactly like the megachurch down the street and just like a carbon copy of that? Which I would always reply, well, no, if you want to do that, just go to the real thing, right? There's no reason to be like a cheap imitation. So it's like, so what are you? Well, we were trying to kind of answer that question. And now, by the way, in 2024, there's a third question that people ask when they say, what kind of church are you? And what do they mean? Are you woke or not? Right? That's the new third question. Are you woke or not? And so we were answering those questions, and back then, and still today, what you had to do when you were answering that question is to get people out in the right direction. You say, well, no, we're a non-denominational church. That's what we are. But everybody had this idea of what it meant to be a non-denominational church, particularly in 2016. And what it meant to be a non-denominational church, it meant one of two things. That you're either like hook, line, and sinker into the modern mega church model. And I know mega church just means a church over 2,000, but I'm going to use it as a way of describing kind of the seeker-sensitive model of the last 20 to 30 years. And so it meant this. If you're post-denominational, that means that you're going to have a killer band, and you're going to serve the best coffee in the world. You're going to have amazing, moving testimonial videos. People are going to be sobbing. There's going to be an emotional song at the end, right? And you don't really care about doctrine all that much. None of those things were true. The other way you could go with post-denominational, with non-denominational, meant that you were like really highly Pentecostal, and so flags, snakes, and anything else goes on Sunday morning, right? Neither of those things were true. And so we needed to come up with some language. And so for a while, we started just calling ourselves multi-denominational. And so here's what would happen. We'd call ourselves multi-denominational. We'd get new people into the church. We'd have a next steps class after service one day. I'd do my favorite little game where I'd say, hey, raise your hand if you're Methodist. And 3 people would raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're Baptist. And 4 people. Raise your hand if you're non-denominational, because that was its own thing now. Oh, yeah, me. Okay, and then we get to the end, and there'd be half the people in Northwest Ohio still had to raise their hand. I'm like, raise your hand if you grew up Catholic. Okay, there are all the other hands, right? And so we'd play this game, and then people would then inevitably at the end in Q&A go, well, I have some questions. And then they'd start to ask their questions, and I would sit up on the hot seat. And people would just be firing away, and they would be structural, and they would be doctrinal, and because everyone was interested, like, well, what do you think about my one thing? Do you agree with me about my one thing? Whatever my one thing is. And what's interesting is they think their one thing is just a thing, but their one thing is the exact thing that sometime over the last 200 years had caused Christians to separate and to form a new thing. And so they thought it was just a thing, but it was actually the thing that made answering Jesus' prayer in John 17 really difficult. And I imagine Jesus looking down and going, hold on. Where did all of these divisions, oh, you guys use the word denomination, sorry. Where did all of these, they mean the same thing. Where did all of these come from? Well, he thinks that this is the only way to interpret this part of Scripture. And then he thought that this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And so now we don't talk to each other. We just call it denominations because it sounds better than divisions. But they're the same thing. And multi-denominational began to mean to people that okay, I can just come to redemption and I can be a part of the church, but I'll just be my Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, whatever self, and we'll all just kind of try to coexist in that. And for a while it kind of worked, but it really wasn't getting to where we wanted to get, and it wasn't solving necessarily the unity problem. Because there was still that like, okay, but hold on, Stephen, what do you really think about this? My thing. And so eventually we needed another term to try to get across what we felt like God was doing. And so one of our elders, Frank, said, well, why don't we call ourselves post-denominational? And so at the time we thought we were making it up. We weren't. We didn't make up the term, but we are commandeering it, right? And I want to tell you about it this morning. Because I think it's needed. I think it's, in part, what can restore truth to the public squares. Let me give you a definition. Post-denominationalism as a church. So this is an individual church. Post-denominationalism as a church is a group of believers, and you're like, church and group of believers, aren't those supposed to be interchangeably? Apparently not anymore. Like apparently you can just be any type of organization and throw the word church on it, right? So a group of believers who unify around core doctrine. And how do you define core doctrine? I'll hit this a little bit more. But we just asked the question. If you lined up the evangelical leaders that are non-heretics over the last 50 years, and you say, hey, do you agree with this, step forward? And if every one of them, 10 out of 10 would step forward, and if they didn't step forward, we would define them as a heretic, right? Then that was core doctrine. Who unify around core doctrine, who believe the Bible is as relevant today as the day that it was written. That is getting into a little bit of the clear truth stuff that I spoke about last night, right? And, this is an important part, intentionally choose to discuss, not divide, over secondary issues. And when I say intentionally choose to discuss, not divide, over secondary issues, what I mean is we are acknowledging on a Sunday morning that we are sitting in a room that when it comes to my thing, somebody down the row may not agree with my thing. And instead of that being a bad thing, it can be a good thing because we're still worshiping together on Sunday morning. Intentionally choosing to do this. Now, I'm also suggesting this morning that post-denominationalism is not just for individual churches, but it is a broader movement that evangelicalism needs to enter into in order to win again. Post-denominationalism as a church movement is Christendom from a variety of doctrinal, methodological, and structural positions, which is how we have gotten our denominations over the years, doctrine, methods, or structures, positions, intentionally unifying around core doctrine, preaching clear biblical truth, and engaging the community by re-entering the public square. And I'll show you some diagrams later to help us understand that. But it is a church-wide movement similar to the seeker movement or whatever other movements have taken over Christendom throughout different eras, but it is a movement of churches. And by the way, you can be in a denomination and still enter into the post-denominational era in the same way that you could have been in a denomination and enter into the seeker or the modern or the megachurch era. Being a part of a denomination doesn't disqualify you from it because there's a heart underneath it. It's a model. Now, let me answer this question, though. How did we get here? How did we historically get here that this is important right now? And then I want to talk about how we practically, as a church, a single church, got here as well. Let me talk about historical. Now, when I talk about historical, I'm going to give a little bit of the backdrop of a big part of evangelicalism over the last 30 to 40 years. And as I do that, I want to show how it was all crescendoing into 2020. And some of us have looked and we go, whoa, hold on. How did we end up in 2020 like we ended up? How come so many of the churches caved? How come so many of our leaders and our institutions and our establishments, how come so many of them went woke? Like, what happened? Well, I want to talk about how it was all set up for a fall. And here's a little bit how it happened, okay? And so, again, when I say history, I mean like 30 to 40 years. And in those 30 to 40 years, what was dominating much of evangelicalism was this kind of seeker-sensitive mega-church model. And it was prevailing, and there were conferences, and there was leaders, and there was books, and there was all of these things. And there were conferences where people would gather from all over the country and listen to just a couple of voices talk about what church was supposed to look like. And here was like one of the ideas underneath it. And there was a phrase that got common, and it was this, that the church is the hope of the world. That the church is the hope of the world. And so the logic went like this. The church is the hope of the world, and if there's a lot of people out there that don't like church, and so let's make church better. How can we make church better? We can make it better by making people like what we do in it. Okay, so what do people like? That was the logic. And then there was a second phrase that was tied into it, and it was the phrase, anything short of sin to reach people. And so the idea became the church is the hope of the world, and so the church has to be able to attract and to reach people. And in order to reach people, we will do anything short of sin. Anything short of sin to reach people. Now, this theory or model had 4 unintended consequences. Back in 2017, I preached a sermon through this series called Church Inc., Church Incorporated. right? And the idea was this, like Foodie Inc., the documentary, that what is supposed to be good and vibrant and healthy, our food, in actually some ways it has started to hurt us. And the idea was similar, that church incorporated what was supposed to be good and strong and healthy actually began to hurt us. And here are 4 unintended consequences, and I'll move through them. But we need to see these because it led us up to the crescendo point. Consequence number 1 was this. And I say unintended consequence because I grew up in this movement, because the only person today that I still would ever call boss, right, mentored me through this movement, gave me opportunities, and I respect immensely. And so I say some of these are unintended consequences. And the first one was church as a product. Church as a product. And here was the idea. The idea was, like in Romans 1, where it says to exchange the truth for the lie. Here was the idea. The idea was that if we can just get people to like church, then they will fall in love with Jesus. If we can just get people to like church, they will fall in love with Jesus. But here's what we learned. That falling in love with church, or something that kind of remotely looks like church, doesn't necessarily translate into love for Jesus. And so when 2020 hits, and you can't go there anymore, but going to church and liking church is equated with loving Jesus, what happens to your faith? It disappears. And so people don't return. Why? Because all of a sudden they realize I can find whatever it was that I was getting there somewhere else if it wasn't Christ. And church as a product then, and this idea, and by the way, whenever you make a product, what do you want to do? You want to make the product as good as possible. And so what happened is this was the logic. At first, with church as a product, it had to become about you as the consumer, you as the individual. And so first, what this set us up for was a me-centric model, ripe to fall to theological liberalism and humanistic thinking. Because the church was supposed to be about me and whether or not I enjoyed it, which is no different than any consumer consuming in anything else. Second, what happened with church as a product is the emergence of celebrity church culture tied in with business-style leadership. And so what we saw was the emergence of these incredible church celebrities and these church conferences, and I used to call them church pornography conferences, because it was like this image that wasn't real. And to get on stage, you had to have a massive church, and the only thing that mattered was how big it was. It didn't matter how you got there. All that mattered is that there was lots of people showing up. It didn't matter if they were discipled. It just mattered whether or not they were in the room. And so it changed, it created this emergence of celebrity, which I know celebrity church culture, it's been around from the beginning, by the way. Paul said it in 1 Corinthians, celebrity pastors, right? But it's been around there for a while. By the way, it all imploded then in the 2010s, right? I mean, just problem with the celebrity church culture. The other thing, though, is it changed the style of leadership in the church. And so instead of needing shepherd, preacher, leaders, all of a sudden, all you needed was leadership, and not even necessarily preaching, just good public speaking, right? And then shepherding just got forgotten, and as shepherding got forgotten in the church, the rise of secular counseling took its place. And so now we wonder why we're all so screwed up. We've handed discipleship off to people trained by Freud. For 30 years, 40 years, because the church said it's about how many people are showing up. The pastor became a celebrity and a speaker, not a shepherd. Because being a shepherd does not grow your church. It doesn't grow your church. Third thing that happened is it changed the product as a whole and those capable of filling it of worship and the worship gathering. And so now in order to be a worship leader, all you needed to do was be able to fit into the skinny jeans, right? And have a voice that was as good as American Idol. Character didn't matter. Heart didn't matter. Can you sing and do you look good? That's all that mattered. And it changed worship. It changed the worship structure. It created this ego in our worship and an ego in our worship culture. Church is a product. The second unintended consequence was this: doctrine became secondary. Doctrine became secondary. Why? Because the point of the weekend service was not to disciple people, but to keep them coming back. That was now the point. And I say this, like church back then was like my golf game. It needed to start off good, didn't matter what happened in the middle, but it needed to end well. Right? And so if you par 18, you're like, I'll come back. I had no idea what happened in the middle, but as long as there's a good emotional song at the end, I guess I'll come back. I feel good. You contrast that with one of my favorite preachers, a guy by the name of Martin Lloyd-Jones, who in the 50s was like ranting and raving in the 50s about an entertainment-driven church, right? And then he would say something at the end like, oh, there are some preachers who end their service with song, just so people will feel good, right? This was in the 50s when he was saying this. Doctrine became secondary, though. And as doctrine became secondary, what happened is this, and here's why it worked. Because when people were entering, like me, my family was a perfect example, well-churched growing up, and we came in doctrinally loaded. And so we stepped into the megachurch already doctrinally loaded. And when you step into the megachurch doctrinally loaded, you're a pre-tither, a pre-giver, and you can you're pre-trained to lead a life group with good doctrinal stability. And so the megachurch could explode, and the megachurch could be funded, and the megachurch could disciple people for a season in life group settings because they were inheriting people who had already been trained doctrinally. But it doesn't matter who you are. If for 20 years you only hear sermons on topics and aren't trained doctrinally, eventually the church became emaciated. Because for 20 years now, there had not been, by and large, doctrinal training and instruction. And so by the time COVID hit, much of evangelicalism had been risen up and trained up in a me-centric environment and was now doctrinally emaciated, and so no wonder it fell in 2020. By the way, and so by the end of 2020, the reality is that many in the evangelical church, right, were not smarter than a fifth grader doctrinally. Because they hadn't been trained it in 20-something years. Okay, that's unintended consequence number 2. Unintended consequence number 3 of the movement was this: social club instead of family. Said another way, it's about the brand. It's about the brand. And there are rules of the brand. Here's rules of the brand. Rule number 1, you must pledge full allegiance to the brand and nothing else. And if you leave the brand or exit the brand, we will ruin you. We'll forget you ever existed. Right? Because it's about the brand, the brand, the brand. And sadly, by the way, this is what keeps well-meaning Christians who you look and you go, you believe what I believe. Why? Why haven't you seen the light? Why haven't you stepped out of this? You believe what I believe. But they can't leave the brand. Rule number 2, you must never ask if the methods are biblical. Ever. And so in 2017, that meant you're not allowed to ask if singing a Taylor Swift song in church is really okay. Right? But in 2020, that meant you can't ask, wait, is BLM really a Christian organization? Do I really have to wear a mask to show somebody that I love them? No, you can't ask these questions. Rule number 3 was this, that your greatest endeavor as a believer was to lay down your life for the brand. Gone are the days of the lay down your life for your brother. Gone are the days, certainly, of the shepherd laying down his life for the sheep. Now the sheep lay their lives down for the brand. Number 4, if the stage says it, it must be true. And so if Andy Stanley gets on stage and says homosexuality, we've misunderstood it. The stage said it, it must be true. If this pastor tells me I need to confess my whiteness, the stage said it, it must be true. Do you see how all of this was just crescendoing up into a point in 2020 for everything to fall? For us to look and go, how are we losing our denominations? How are we losing all of these entities? And by the way, Megan, in her talk this afternoon, is just going to flatten us all with evidence of what was going on under the radar. But this was just moving to a point. Unintended consequence number 4. I know all of this right now. I'm setting up the stage, right? Unintended consequence number 4 was this. Cogs in the wheel instead of partners in the gospel. Discipleship moved from being formed in Christ to being formed into a good part of the church machine. And so discipleship during this era was about 3 things. Serve, give, get in a life group. Serve, give, get in a life group. What happens when you can't go to church anymore? You can't serve. Why would I give? And I can't be in a group. Well, if that's all I've been discipled to, then I'll walk away from my faith. And by the dozens, the hundreds, the thousands, whatever, across the country, we saw people leave the church in 2020. Now, that was the stage of much of evangelicalism entering into 2020. The question is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Here's my proposal. My proposal is that the church needs to enter into a post-denominational era. A post-denominational era. And understanding the underpinnings of evangelicalism over the last 30 years helps us establish 4 primary reasons that post-denominationalism is essential right now. Let me give them to you. 4 reasons why I think this is the way forward. Number 1, the lack of doctrinal foundation in the average Christian. Number 2, unity of the body of Christ in a post-Christian culture. It is cute to fight about doctrine when we're winning. It's not cute to fight about doctrine when they're indoctrinating our kids. It's also not helpful. Number 3, taking the best from the 3 pillars of evangelicalism. I'll explain that in a second. Number 4, regional partnerships for culture forming. These are the 4 reasons why I would say post-denominationalism is needed. Let's take them one by one. Reason number 1, the lack of doctrinal foundation in the average Christian. Again, the average Christian or evangelicalism as a whole, right, topically taught over the last 30 years or so, right, by and large, the doctrinal foundation is so limited that it's not hard to believe why so many people profess Christ and also hold to liberal theological ideas. They haven't been taught any different. They don't know. And they're so again, hungry for proper doctrine that as a whole, and by the way, we don't get to choose the world that we pastor in. We have to live in the reality of what we live in. And the reality that we live in is that the church is like at the beginning of Hebrews 6 when Paul is like, okay, I want to move on, but we need to return to some elementary doctrines. And the church as a whole in our country needs to return to some elementary doctrines. Let me say this another way. If those who professed Christ in our country were solid doctrinally on the core tenets of our faith, our nation would look dramatically different. Yes, there are the second and the third doctrines that are fun. And we need to get there at some point because they can produce discipleship and a lot of good things. But if we just got back to the core, we'd win again. We'd win again. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, unity of the body of Christ in a post-Christian culture. I would say this, we stand right now at a precipice and we have one of 2 options. Option number 1 or reaction number 1 to the fact that we're losing right now in culture. And we are. We know this. Reaction number 1, we become further divided through our secondary doctrinal disputes because it was, quote, those Christians, end quote, that were the real problem. That's reaction 1. We look out and go, well, you know what? You know what's really the problem? It's those Calvinists over there. They're the problem. Or it's those Arminians over there. They're the problem. It's those premillennialists. It's those postmillennialists. It's those people who their wife is their co-pastor. It's those people who whatever. They're the real problem. And if everybody in Christendom will just become like us, then we'll solve the problem. That's one reaction. That is the reaction of the denominational issue over the last 100, 200 years. Or another possible reaction, as we stand looking at a broken, messed up, screwed up world and fallen culture, another reaction could be this: to intentionally unify around core doctrine, because the battle for culture will not be won by a small segment of divided believers. It won't. The battles of what we're facing right now will not be won by one little small segment of Christianity. To the detriment or to the turning on the back of 80, 90, 100, or 80, 90% of the rest of Christendom. The battle will not be won that way. Number 3. So, unity of the body in Christ, unity of the body of Christ in a post-Christian culture. That's reason 2. We have to unify if we're going to win. Okay, reason number 3. Taking the best from the 3 pillars of evangelicalism into this new era. Now, I want to show you some graphs because graphs are fun. Okay, show the first one. You don't know what the first one, that's the first one. Well done. Okay. Actually, no. No, that is the first one. Okay, so let's look at Christianity here, by and large. Charismatic at the top, right? You're like, why are the charismatics at the top? Because they're always kind of floating, right? Okay, so they're over there. Cessationist at the bottom, right? We've got historic on one side and modern on the other, right? 4 quadrants of Christianity. And everybody would kind of find themselves somewhere in there. You could probably plot your own history. Hey, go to the one that talks about Stephen's history, right? There's 4 little stars on it. If you can find that one, I think they're at the end there. Okay, and there you go. Okay, so this is my life, right? So there's me in 1995 in my AG church. There's me in 2008. Right? And even the cessationist thing right there would say, well, how much was it practiced in the mega church that I was operating in? Very little. In fact, back in then, if you were a good mega church, you actually told people not to raise their hands because it would intimidate new people. Right? You would say that. You would say that. You don't, no, that'll freak somebody out. Right? Don't raise your hand. Okay, then in 2016 when we started, we kind of just started moving a little bit, right? And now that's probably where we're at right now, or at least that's where I'm at in 2024, right? Okay, now go to the second one, which is just the gold box. Nope, not that one. The second one is just the gold box. There we go. Okay, here is what is the post-denominational safety zone. It's these 4 quadrants. And I'm suggesting that being in any of these 4 quadrants, we should be able to work together. We should be able to look at each other and say, you're not the enemy, you're part of the solution. We've unified around core doctrine. You say, how do you define core doctrine? Well, if it was in the creeds, and if we've universally embraced it since the Reformation, if we've universally embraced it in American evangelicalism, all right, and it doesn't go against the early creeds and those types of things, that can be core doctrine. That if you exist in that, we should be able to work together, or we should be able to speak at a conference together. We should be able to be on the same team. In other words, if you're in the box, stop making fun of each other. Stop yelling at each other. Stop saying they're the problem. Stop telling people not to go to their church. Stop fighting on Twitter. Stop whatever it is. Next slide with the blue box. Nope, just the blue box. You can take that one down. Yep, okay, just the blue box. Now, here's the blue box. The blue box is what I would still define as Orthodox Christianity, but in the gap between the yellow box and the green box, there are people that are so segmented they will refuse to work with anyone else. They won't. They just won't do it. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. Next one. That's the one with the words. Okay, here's a couple of examples. On the bottom left, you'll have what I would call the intellectual elitists. They're so in their theology and their doctrine. They're so, if you don't baptize your baby, you're a pagan, right? They're so deep into their intellectual elitism that they scoff at anybody who doesn't hold to them, and they won't play nice with anyone. And so they'll look up in the top right corner where there's a charismatic or a top right person, right? They use drums still in their worship set, and they go, they're the real problem, right? And they won't work with them. Okay, on the other right, I would say there's certain methods, right? Like we saw this was very tragic, like a church, like literally kicking a Bible on stage, right? And you're like, okay, that might be a problem, right? Now, are they brothers and sisters in Christ? I think so. But, can we take a step in, please? Okay, outside of the box, by the way, on both sides, on one side, on the historical side, we've seen people slide out of the box because they just went woke. And so we lost our Methodists, or half of them. We lost half of our Presbyterians, right? I mean, take all the denominations. They split along the woke line, right? And so they stepped out of the box. We're no longer on the same team, right? By the way, on the bottom, on the cessationist side, or the charismatic side sometimes, you get weird cults. Right? On the right, you get heretics. And we've seen this. People that we used to look and go, oh my gosh, we're on the same page. Oh no, we're not on the same page anymore. You've stopped believing the Bible. Right? And they've slid out. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that those who exist in the green box, but not the yellow box, you need to step into the yellow box. There's so much work to do. There's so much work to do. Obviously, those who have removed themselves from the box altogether, like the end of James chapter 5, we want to bring them back into the fold. And we want to love them and bring them back into the fold. But the orange box or the yellow box, that is an opportunity. That is like 80% of evangelical Christianity that is I think, ready to win and ready to work together again. And there's an amazing opportunity to unify in that box, to stop fighting and to actually answer Jesus' prayer in John 17. Can I just point out a couple of things that Jesus said? That they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be in us. Why? So that the world may believe that you have sent me. In other words, our unity will be in part a belief to the world that Jesus is actually the Son of God. That our disunity is a picture to the world that Jesus is not the Son of God. It's a picture to them. He correlates this unity to glory. The glory that you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one even as we are one. Look at this. I and them and you and me, that they may become perfectly one. Perfectly one. Whoa. Whoa. These are powerful words of Jesus. Now, number 4. Oh, let me give you real quick the things that I think we need to take from each pillar of evangelicalism. I'll do this quickly. Do we have a slide of that? Okay. Historical mainline. 5 things. Tradition. It's not bad. Reverence. Set doctrine. Like reverence, like let's stop kicking Bibles on stage. Set doctrine or catechisms. Like training our kids. Right? And it doesn't have to be the Westminster, but establishing core doctrine in our children. Culture forming. It was called the Presbyterian Revolution for a reason. These guys have gotten this for years. And biblical preaching. Preach the Bible. Let's bring that with us into the middle. Second thing we need to bring. This one from the modern megachurch. We need to bring this in with us. It's funny that relevance is now a dated word. But relevance. Let's be aware of what's going on in the world around us. Let's be aware, like Paul said, that there might be seekers in our midst at some point. That's not a bad thing. Paul told us to be aware of it. Joy. The first time I walked into the mega church, I thought I was walking into Disney World. People were happy. It grabbed my heart. You can like coming to church? This is mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. Freedom. And many people, they escaped religious institutions where there was no grace, no freedom at all. And they stepped into the megachurch and they're like, wow, I'm free. Let's bring that with us. Accessibility. Oftentimes you'll see people in certain segments and they'll rail against megachurches or anyone who's not in their little segment. And their churches cap out at 50 and they haven't seen a convert in 50 years. And they'll make fun of the people baptizing people. All right? Accessibility. And then professionalism. Leadership isn't bad. If you're going to have graphics, do them right. If you're going to serve coffee, make it good. Or just don't. But professionalism, leadership, it's a win. There are many churches around the country where the pastor needs to put down his seminary books and read a leadership book, and their church would triple, right? Just understanding basic concepts of how to be a part of it and lead an organization. Number 3, that's that in that category. And then in the charismatic, quasi-charismatic category, here are the things we need to bring with us. Holiness. Charismatics hate sin. They hate it. Good for them. Emotion. Emotion's not bad. Some of you still worship like this. Emotion's not bad. It's good. I love Jesus. I like to smile about it. Sometimes I cry about it. He's that good. He's that good. Love of God's word. When I say love of God's word, I don't mean biblical preaching. I just mean like individual love of God's word. Like I just need to know it. I need to memorize it. I need to write it on my mirror. I need to have sticky notes. I need to be able to pull out a verse. I need to be able to highlight. Like I just love the word of God. We need to bring that with us. Evangelism. Charismatics love to tell people, you're going to hell, and I don't want you to. And then fervent prayer. Because the charismatics are good at knowing that there's a spiritual battle going on, and we got to win it with some prayer. And if we bring these things with us into this post-denominational middle, that's a powerful church. It's a powerful church that can do some things. Now, along the way, there's a couple of things that we need to do as individual churches to get there. I'll move through them quickly. Number 1, we have to embrace simple but meaningful. And I will contrast this with the seeker-sensitive model, which was I would call complex but motivational. In the simple but meaningful model, there's a few things that we need to understand. One is we have to remember this. Romans 1:16, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and then to the Greek. That it is only the gospel that changes anyone. It is not our moving lights. It is not our fog machines. It is not our powerful testimonial videos. It is only the gospel. And so on a Sunday morning in the simple but meaningful church, what do? You sing songs that elevate Jesus. You pray and you pause and you ask people to confess sin. You preach the Bible, and then you read the Bible from an actual physical Bible. And you just remind people the simple, powerful gospel. And Sunday morning becomes the primary outlet of discipleship again. Right? Think about how sad that was. That for 20, 30 years, a large segment of Christianity, Sunday morning wasn't the primary outlet of discipleship anymore. It's the wasted opportunity. No, Sunday morning is the pastor's responsibility to disciple the entire crowd, not just one segment, right? Simple but meaningful. By the way, when you embrace simple but meaningful, then this, and I say this all the time, any church that is not in an impoverished district that struggles with money is either doing it stupidly or isn't discipling their people. The modern church in America shouldn't struggle with money. There's plenty of it floating around. Oftentimes we struggle with money in our church, not because we don't have enough, though, but because we have just started spending. We don't have a revenue problem, we have an expense problem. And a lot of the expense problem was the complex but motivational lights and this and that and movies and overstaffed and over-ministried and all of these other things. And it stripped money away. And so instead of being able to serve the poor, we had to serve the projector. That's number 1. Embrace simple but meaningful. Number 2, we have to unify around core doctrine. I already talked about that. And by the way, it'll create issues. And people will leave. People will leave because here's what people do when you unify around core doctrine. Everybody just agrees that the pastor agrees with them. Or everyone just thinks the pastor agrees with them, right? And they're usually fine. And so they go, well, hold on, you actually believe this? Wow, I got to go. I'm like, okay, well, you were never bought in then. You were never bought in, and that's fine. That's fine. Somebody will come and be like, did you know that this person was a this? Yeah. Did that change anything they said? No. So get over it. Stop using your labels. Did they preach something that was heretical? No. Then just take it in, right? Unifying around core doctrine. Number 3, preaching clear biblical truth. We already talked about that. And then number 4, this is, I'll end here. The step 4 is this. We have to choose big impact over big church. There was a time when I worked in a church where 1 out of 30 people in the metropolitan area would have said it was their home church. According to Malcolm Gladwell, that's a tipping point. Then how come the city doesn't reflect the kingdom? Big church has not solved our problem. I'm not against big church. If we ever become one, we'll figure it out. Big church is not the problem, but it's also not the solution. And when we were just about big church, it didn't actually shift or move the needle. And so we have to move from big church to big impact. To big impact. What does big impact look like? Let me just give you a couple examples. 2 years ago, we had a business meeting as a church, and my mega church self's head would have exploded. Because we stepped up and we said, we're going to do 2 things new this year. We're going to start a college, and we're going to build a farm. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now at Redemption. My mega church self would have said, those are distractions to growing the church. My post-denominational self said, who cares how many people go to church if our region continues to decay into despair? How do we make a long-term impact? Well, let's start a college that 100 years from now will still be discipling and training the next generation. Let's do things that will last longer than us, that aren't just our brand. When you choose big impact over big church, sometimes that might mean this. It might mean putting your name on something just to help it. It might mean taking your name off of something just to help it. I had that experience last year. I have that experience often in town, actually. I'm like, just don't put my name on it. More people will show up. Just don't tell them it was me. That's okay. I was pitching Revere Bible College to a local pastor. We got to the end, and he said, I just don't get it, Stephen. I don't understand what's in it for your church. And he was serious. I said, in it for our church, we've spent $250,000. There's nothing in it for our church. That's the point. It's not about us. How prideful could we be that everything we would do would have to be about our brand? What, are we going to be impressed that a couple hundred people or a couple thousand people someday show up to a building? Timothy had a church of tens of thousands in Ephesus 2,000 years ago, and they didn't even have the internet. We're nothing. None of us are anything. We're going to die. Our church brands will disappear, but God's church and the kingdom will keep going. Let's make investments into that. Get past yourself, get past your brand, get past your social media. Let's work together. There's a post-denominational era that is ready for us to step into it, and if we do, we can win again. What will it produce, by the way, when we do this? Churches that are theologically sound, experientially rich, professionally excellent, family-oriented, and culturally engaged. All of them. All of them. Because when you bring in all 15 of those elements from the 3 pillars, and you employ them all, when you embrace simple but meaningful, when you unify around core doctrine, preach clear biblical truth, and when you choose big impact over big church, those 5 things through the Holy Spirit will naturally emerge. What will it take to do it? To each and every one of us, pastor, elder, everyday saint, what will it take? One word. Philippians 2, 3, and 4. Don't be selfish. Don't try and impress others. Be humble. Thinking of others is better than yourselves. Don't look out only to your own interest, but take an interest in others too. One word that it will take. Humility. This will never happen apart from humility. Post-denominationalism, even in an individual church, can't happen apart from humility. The humility that says, it's not about me. The humility that says, maybe I don't see the full picture on this doctrinal issue. The humility that says, I know that you and I disagree on this. We both believe this is what the Bible says, but we're drawing different conclusions, but it's still in the box. We're still unified around core doctrine, and so I can lay it down. The humility that says we're not going to use secondary issues as litmus tests for anything and everything. Humility. Okay, I was going to give you one word, but I'm going to give you 3 words. It's in an acronym. We just need to hug it out. We need to hug it out. Humility, unity, and godliness. And if evangelicalism, in that box, across the nation, will hug it out with humility, unity, and godliness, we're going to win again. Because the church is unstoppable. And the gospel can change any life. And Jesus isn't done. And this fight isn't over. And so I would challenge all of us who are here in Northwest Ohio, whatever church you go to, whatever influence you have, let's hug it out here first. Let's be a picture to the rest of the country of what happened when the Northwest Ohio church stepped into the realm of post-denominationalism. When Northwest Ohio church worked together to culture form. When the Northwest Ohio church decided every kid in Northwest Ohio is going to be able to afford a Christian education because the church came together and we stripped the public schools of their influence. Let's show the rest of the world what it would look like if the Church of Northwest Ohio came together and created the largest Christian and biblical counseling center in the country, and all of the psychologists, psychiatrists, and humanist thinkers trying to disciple our people left town because they couldn't find business anymore. And then I'll hit one last one. Every region in this nation, every metropolitan in this nation needs an affordable Christian, classical, conservative college. Every single one. In today's dollars, every Christian student in America should be able to go to a college that they can drive to so that they don't have to be stripped away from everything they've ever known in life. Taken away to some weird cesspool of sin, indoctrinated by a bunch of liberal professors with the intent of destroying their souls and releasing them out to propagate this evil. Instead, every Christian student should be able to look at it and say, you can drive to a Christian college in your neighborhood that should cost less than $6,000 a semester if you know what you're doing. You don't have to go into debt. You don't have to get indoctrinated. Instead, you're going to get trained. You're going to get equipped. And all of the Christian business leaders in the region are going to give you a job because you have a work ethic and don't put your pronouns on your resume. Right? And if we do that long enough, give us 10, 20, 30 years, because we know this. They're aborting their babies, and we keep having them, right? Okay? You give us 10, 20, 30 years, and we run this play, and we will win. Amen? All right, let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you that we always get to rise back up in optimism. Yeah, we're perplexed. It's a perplexing world. Oh, but we're not destroyed. Lord, the enemy can do and throw every attack, but if we stand in unity, it says it'll be a reflection of your glory. And so I pray you would unify your church in this region. Use every influencer and person in this room. And Father, we pray that a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, that it would just be different. And Father, I pray that you would raise this up all across our nation in every region. Rise up leaders, unifiers, the right influencers, the right funders. Ground game, Lord. We're going to win this back. Help us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Clear Truth Conference is presented by Redemption Church in Monclova, Ohio. For more clear biblical teaching, visit experienceredemption.com.